Hello, everyone. Welcome to the third week of Dobac's Business Analysis Summit. My name is Amarachi Eziteko. I'm a business analyst and a member of Dobac team, and I'll be moderating the session for tonight. All right, so for those who are joining for the first time or those who don't know what Dobac is all about, Dobac is an acronym for David Odepidan Business Analysis Community. We're a community dedicated to the growth and development of business analysis professionals. We pride ourselves in being a supportive community to our members, ensuring they have the right resources to thrive. Um, as part of our goals for 2025, we are redefining business analysis, and that's part of the reason we organized this business analysis summit. In the last 2 weeks, we've had three amazing speakers, walk us through habits for effective business analysis, business analyst framework for success, and how to thrive as a business analyst, improving your credibility and confidence. And today we have an incredible speaker with us, a globally recognized business analysis system analyst and project manager with expertise in delivering enterprise projects worth up to $2 billion. She's an international keynote speaker, the best-selling author of Creating Requirements for Software Projects and the Job. Make sure you get the book. Also, and she has delivered over 200 presentations worldwide, known for her engaging and award-winning style. She's passionate about empowering professionals in business analysis and project management, and that's why we have her here tonight. So, with your emojis, your celebratory reactions, let's welcome Pamela Paterson. Thank you for joining us, Pamela.
Thank you very much for having me, and thanks to
Yeah.
David for bringing me here, and as well, just hello and welcome to everybody wherever you're beaming in from this world. I'm going to share my screen, and I have a little bit of a cough, so let's hope that it doesn't interfere with today.
That's fine.
So I'm going to start sharing my screen.
Okay, so just before you start, let me just drop a bit of like a notification. So I know we'll have a lot of questions as the session goes on, but just take note of your questions. At the end of the session, we'll have time to answer them. All right, you can go on, Pamela.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So, hi everybody, and welcome to this session about enhancing IT project success through effective information design. We're going to talk about what information design is, the structure of information and how we can benefit from it, how to reduce time and increase efficiency in our communication, and how to get more out of stakeholders with less time, less effort, less hassle. And I am your presenter today, Pamela Paterson. I'm from Canada. I live kind of in between Toronto and Montreal, if you're familiar. I have a background in journalism, chemistry, and systems engineering. And as described, I'm both a business analyst and a project manager. I taught college and project management for a long time. I wrote 12 books, including 2 international bestsellers. And I have another book coming out in 2025 about interviewing stakeholders. As well, for the second year in a row, I've been acknowledged as Sessionize's most active speakers out of 53,000 speakers. So happy to be on that list. So let's start with a common scenario that we all face, getting information from stakeholders. And let's suppose that a business analyst needs information from the VP of Finance about sensitive data for a new financial system. They are implementing a new financial system and need to know the sensitive data so that they can set up security and block certain users from having access to it. Things like revenue, profit loss, things like that. So the BA does what they normally do. They send an email request for information. And maybe it looks a little bit like this. The request to the VP of Finance for a $50 million project about implementing a new financial system is, As per our recent discussion, the project management office is looking for the data sensitivities on the project. This will allow us to determine roles and permissions in the new system, who needs access to which financial data and where is it restricted, for example, salary, revenue, and profit. Can you please let me know? Thank you. Okay, so the words make sense. The request is clear. Let's see how this went. The business analyst sends the request to the VP of Finance. The VP of Finance is a very busy person. The request didn't come from the president. It came from below, from a business analyst. So it's not his top priority. In addition, the request was an email. It seemed a bit vague to him. It wasn't specific enough. What sensitive data? I don't know. What does this mean? What does it not mean? What format should he give it in? It wasn't easy enough. He doesn't understand the kind of data needed, and it just seems so time-consuming. So the VP of Finance punts it to his employee to deal with, the manager of finance. However, the finance manager doesn't understand the request. She wasn't part of the original conversation, but it's coming from her VP, so she knows that she needs to act on it right away. But she doesn't know what to do. She sends the information back right away to the business analyst, and she feels good about clearing this task so she can get on with her day. Unfortunately, she sent the wrong information back. So now the business analyst reviews the data and begins to disseminate it. The BA sends this data to the IT department because it doesn't know that it's wrong. And the IT department starts configuring the security roles and permissions and blocking access from some people to the sensitive data. Some users get really upset because now they're blocked from this data that they need to do their job. They begin sending emails to their managers. Their managers are now spending time on this. The IT department is getting upset because this is what they were told to do by the BA. The BA is upset because this is the information they were given from the finance manager. The finance manager now feels bad because she was only doing her job the best she could. The VP of Finance is irritated because he gave this task to his finance manager and she didn't do it right, and he doesn't have time to waste. Now, the BA just doesn't understand. This was a simple exercise. Why did they do it the wrong way? The BA sends an email to the VP of Finance saying, this is the wrong data. And now the VP of Finance asks the finance manager to do it again. The finance manager now is nervous and unfortunately does it wrong again. And it's not her fault. She wasn't part of the original conversation, and the information given to her is not in a format that she understood. So now the BA suggests a meeting to describe the need again. The finance manager agrees to the meeting, but it's a really busy week, so the BA needs to wait until the following week. So the next week, the BA and finance manager meet, and she understands now what to do. At the end of it all, the BA is so exhausted and needs to take a holiday. And this shows that miscommunication is the most expensive part of any project. We read approximately 2 to 3 million words per year. And when you have a team of 10, that's more than 20 million words per year. Think about how much time could be spent on this poor quality of communication. So it is worth our while to find ways to make more effective and efficient communication, and this is through information design. So what if the BA tried a different communication method involving information design? Information design is literally designing your information for the audience in mind, thinking about what they know, what they don't know, how they access information, and what their needs are. It's not that complicated, but it's a very effective methodology that I'm going to show you today. So we know the VP of Finance has limited time, job pressures, deadlines, and everybody is doing the best that they can. What if we gave the VP of Finance a template? It clearly shows the information he needs to gather, data type, role, and permissions allowed. What if we took this one step further? What if we gave the VP Finance data tips? So not only a template with columns, but actually adding tips. So we're telling clearly what kind of data goes here. So for example, for data type, salary, role could be accounts payable clerk, and permissions allowed following the CRUD model: create, read, view, update, and delete. As an alternative idea, why don't we add examples to the template so there can be no mistake about what data that is being asked for? So now the VP of Finance can quickly understand the ask and make no mistake about what it actually is. Now, this scenario actually happened, and the VP of Finance initially gave no information, ignored the email, and then once the proper template was provided, based on the needs that need to be populated, then the VP of Finance gave all of this extensive information back in 3 days because it's easy to do. I'm going to show you kind of the science behind this. Helping stakeholders helps us. And when they have limited time, we find ways to save them time. Okay? Now, one of the reasons that you might need a holiday is that you spent 10 times the amount of effort and time on this project than if you just spent 15 minutes creating a template. Helping stakeholders helps us. So stakeholders have problems, right? I mean, they have to multitask, they have limited time, they have a lot of job pressures, they have deadlines, just like us. We are always multitasking. We have limited time. We have pressures. We have deadlines. And everybody is doing the best that they can. Very, very important that we recognize that in our communication. I wrote a #1 international bestseller called Get the Job. And as part of that research, I asked recruiters and job hunters and, what the biggest challenge was that job seekers had. And they said mental health issues. So I don't know about everywhere in the world, but in Canada, mental health issues affect about 1/3 of our coworkers in some way. So it's about being mindful of the environment that we work in. And as long as stakeholders have these problems, like us, it'll cause a problem for us in getting positive stakeholder communication and efficiency. So maybe the solution is in helping them with these problems. Let's take a look at this. Before we can solve a problem, we need to plan our communication approach. And if you've seen this communication model, what it shows, I'll use my highlighter here. What it shows is that we create the message and we intentionally choose tone, word choice, and the message. So tone can affect things. So if we say good morning or we say good morning, okay, tone affects things. And word choice. Do this right away for me. Can you please do this right away? Tone affects communication. So does channel, the way that we decide to communicate. And here's a grouping here of channel, whether we're going to communicate by phone, email, text, Zoom, maybe a multiple channels, the technique, interviews, workshops, the tool, Excel, Miro, DevOps, Jira. And then the stakeholder interprets the message based on their perception, understanding, and how they process information. As we saw in the example with the VP of Finance, neither the VP of Finance nor the finance manager could complete the task. And because of their perception, understanding, and the way that they process information. And as a result, their response was very poor, right? And then we also have the added pressures and difficulties of environment. So noise, culture, context. So communication is actually very complicated. But there are ways around this so that we can get better quality. And who controls the communication? We do. 100% we control the communication. controlling the action to get the reaction. Because we make all the choices. We make the choices about the channel, the technique, the tool, the message, the tone. We make all the choices to elicit the proper response. So if we know better how to make these choices about communicating the information, about initiating it, we're automatically going to get a better response. Okay, so we are in the driver's seat when it comes to effective stakeholder communication. And now I'm going to show you some methods around that that you can apply to your job right away. So we want to make it easy for them to do their work. That's how we're going to get people to participate better. We want to make it easy or easier, okay? Because we can't always make something easy, but we can make it easier, as we saw with the example of the VP of Finance. And I often hear, yeah, but isn't this going to take me time to do? It is, you know, it is going to take some time to do, but not as much time as miscommunication. The most expensive cost on any project is miscommunication. Now, some people might say, who cares what the email looks like? I sent it, didn't I? Well, again, the average person reads between 2 and 3 million words a year. And if we have 10 people on a team reading that same email, think about the exploding effects of that miscommunication. So a lot of people think that it doesn't matter how we produce the message. It's just our responsibility to draft an email, hit send, not care what it looks like, not care how it's packaged, even if it looks like a textbook crammed into an email. But in fact, we do ourselves a disservice cramming everything into an email because they can't understand what we're trying to say. And then we go back and forth, like the VP of Finance. I came across a study about email recently, and the researchers determined that after 3 emails of going back and forth, it's recommended to find another way to communicate, like a meeting. So in addition to that, there is the expectation by our stakeholders of business analysts that we give information in the most appropriate format. So we're not going to give a 50-page Word document if a PowerPoint presentation summary is a better format for that individual. And that's usually executives. We are a visual society now that expects information in digestible formats and chunks, especially the higher up the management chain that we go. So let's dive into this. Here is a before email. I'm going to show you before and after. And this information is not designed for the audience, but it's a pretty typical email. So this is an email about, it's the knitting club. Subject is a meeting. And hi, looking forward to seeing all of you on Thursday for the knitting club. We really need to get the elections done so we know who's president. Linda, can you bring the ballots? Tarek, see if you can find the privacy booths. And Alex, thanks for bringing the desserts. We all need desserts at a good election. So if you have any questions, let me know. This is a clear email. It's clearly written. The ask is clear. But the problem is people don't like to read paragraphs anymore, even a very small paragraph like this one. And many times they won't, and they'll miss your messaging. When we look at this email and we try to think about how this could be presented better, we see some elements here that are common. We see people, Linda, Tarek, Alex, okay, Pam. We see things. We see ballots, privacy booths, and desserts, okay? So we're now thinking about how can we group and collect like information. And this is not dissimilar to sets and subsets if you have a math background. So we're looking for common elements that we can group together. And now look at the after. So it's very clear. You can really, you don't even have to read. You can actually just scan and see who is bringing what and when. And the subject line, they also take advantage of the subject line here to put their names at the front of the subject line, because if we get 300 emails a day, aren't we going to look at the ones that have our name in the subject line? So subject line has the emails. And can you please do your action items by this Thursday? So as we are using our mobile devices, as we are scanning, as we are just looking at subject lines in our Outlook, we can very quickly see, and so can our stakeholders, where they need to plug in and some important deadlines. Okay. Now, this is a very simple example. It's one paragraph, but think about if you did this all the time for very complicated topics, the scalability and the efficiencies that you would get from that. So here's another example. Here's a very simple request. It's a requirement. We need this requirement added to the system. The call center agents who answer the phone right now see how many calls they have in their own queue to answer, but also all the other calls for other agents. We don't want that. We just want them to be able to see their own number of calls waiting. So this kind of sounds like a conversation that might happen in a meeting that somebody just documented and wrote down and is ready to send it to their stakeholders. Okay. And again, there's really nothing wrong with this. It's a very clear request. It's very simply written. It's correctly written. But when we think about our users and about structuring information through information design, we are now thinking about how can we break this down into different categories and groupings. Well, one of them, when it comes to requirement, is the current state, the future state, and the actual change requested. Okay? So you can see how much easier it is to do the after and do the information design. And what does this mean is that you get efficiencies all the way through the information lifecycle, all the way from the time that you initially write something to the time that it's reviewed, approved, submitted, and implemented, because every person along the line understands this requirement better, and just by scanning, because people don't like to read. And this is a concept of form and function. If you came across this concept in other disciplines, you know, for example, giraffes have long necks and they can reach the leaves on the tall trees. Birds aren't built like elephants. They are lightweight so they can fly. I mean, there's a direct link between form and function. So knowing the function, knowing what people need out of the information, helps us with the form and to design that form. So I'm going to show you an example now of a status report. Here's a typical status report. There's actually nothing wrong with this status report. Subject line, status report, please find the status. Very short, very simple. But in designing information, you're deliberately creating a visual spatial relationship between the information and the meaning of it, so our stakeholders can extract meaning easily. Take a look at the after design. Beginning with the subject line, because that's what stakeholders are going to see first in their Outlook or on their mobile. Green status, week ending December 5th. Now, if you are a busy manager or a busy executive and you see the subject line of green status, you can move on. You don't even need to open up this email, which is optimal. And now, when you look at the design of this information, it starts with the overall project status and then goes down to status by phase. Overall status is green. You might not keep reading because you're a busy manager. Okay, so you are deliberately creating this visual and spatial relationship between the information and the meaning of it, and how our stakeholders extract meaning, the order in which they look at information. Okay. And also notice the visual cues of green, green for green, and yellow. And it's organized by phases. Okay. So much easier to digest this information than this one. So form versus function, it's a deliberate choice and it's not left to chance. I'm going to show you some more examples. Design information, I've kind of geeky, I've done these kind of analyses, but designed information can easily save 50% of time in the interaction. I've actually done numbers in Excel over this before and after. And designed information also helps mitigate some of the causes of miscommunication to do with information overload. Because we're using fewer words, less information, stakeholders can focus more on our important points. And information design also reduces the message complexity. It's easier to read and absorb. And it also increases the chances that our messages will be read. Because when stakeholders are inundated with information and there is competition for their eyes, you want to cut through that competition and make your stuff the easiest thing to look at all day. Will a stakeholder be more inclined to read an email that has their name in the subject line? 100%. So as a benefit to you, what happens when you can be relied upon to be consistently sending out efficient, well-designed information to stakeholders? I believe it enhances your brand. There is predictability and reliability in a consistent experience with you, which leads to better participation by stakeholders. So there's a direct benefit in thinking about your users and how you design information. Get a sip of water for my cough. My apologies.
No, it's fine.
I'm going to show you now 5 examples of the same slide. They all have the same content, and it's actually an excerpt from ChatGPT about how to improve presentations. So here's the first one. While the content might be quite good, the formatting is terrible. Centered text, no headings, no title, no bold or contrast to make headings stand out, lack of white space, font too small, the line is too long. There's actually science behind if there's a long line length, the eye gets tired by the end of it and people might lose meaning, okay? And so basically, even though this has the right content, it's basically unreadable. And if we had an ask for stakeholders in here, how many people wouldn't even see it? Lots of them. And what does that mean? If they didn't see the request, they can't action it. And then you're asking again. Here is a different version. So this is better. The bullets are better and the bullet headings. So here, adding some more clarity. But the font is still too small. There's too much text and the line length is too long. So it's better, but it's not great. So on top of that, we're giving them everything at once. So instead of what they need at the time. So they will be spending their time reading this slide and not listening to us. So if this slide is a slide in a PowerPoint, it's going to be ineffective. This version is even better. So it's an attractive table. It makes things easier to read. There's some bolded items. It's very clear based on the headings, what the different information is. Information is separated and grouped so we can scan. The line length is shorter. This is getting to be a good presentation of the information. This one, optionally, it adds some bullets. This might be easier in some cases, depending on the information. And the last example is adding some small visuals, some small icons. This works well for presentations and PowerPoint. It's not as effective if you're just sending an email, because emails, they tend not to handle the graphics that well, but also they tend to have a faster momentum, right? But in a PowerPoint, adding these graphics, and take a look at, let's take a look at the beginning again. So if you take this information, and maybe I spent only 10 minutes presenting the information differently. This is much easier to read. The line length is shorter. It's easier on the eyes. People can understand this way better than the first one. Okay? And if we look at some other concepts around information design, proximity, grouping, and hierarchy, they don't sound like scary terms, I hope, but grouping is kind of what we've been doing in the email for the elections, for the knitting elections, finding out what elements are there. Well, there were people and there were things they needed to bring. And grouping. We group related items together and we create a visual hierarchy if it's needed. Okay? So the objectives of a presentation, for example, notice that they're all the same size, they're all the same shape, they're not put in any particular order, they're all equally weighted visually. And what does this infer? It infers that they're all equal and unordered, and there's no real order or hierarchy to these objectives. Let me show you a different example. But in this version, the objectives are numbered and they're put in an order. So this might infer meaning to your stakeholders. It could mean some kind of order, chronological or importance, but we don't want to infer order when there is none, because it mixes up our message that we want to give. So this is a very intentional design technique, is whether you're going to use numbered items or not. This is an unordered list. It infers absolutely no priority or hierarchy or importance at all. Now let's take a look at this one. Look at how these objectives are now ordered. They're ordered as a subset to a main one. Okay, so just that very small indent actually changes the meaning of this slide and of this information. It infers that these three objectives are nested and they're part of the main one. Okay, so isn't that interesting that just a slight indent changes the meaning, and then we're back to form and function. So how we place elements on a page infers meaning, and this placement of objectives on the page was very intentional. They're very equally weighted visually, so they carry the same weight, inferring that one is not more important than the other. They are not numbered, they are not in any hierarchy, and when you read the objectives, it makes sense. To engage stakeholders in presentations, to design and create effective presentations, to understand cognitive science techniques, and to apply cognitive science techniques to presentations. There is no order to those objectives. There is no one is more important than the other. Okay? So when we're communicating non-verbally and actually visually, by the way that we put the elements on the slide, we need to be very careful about how we place elements on the page and how we group information. I'm going to get now into something called contrast. And contrast is using different color, size, shape to create interest and emphasis. Okay? Now look at this first table. You can't really tell that the first row is a header role. There's nothing to differentiate it from the other data. And so what happens when you use a table like this is that you're forcing stakeholders to spend time figuring this out. And again, we don't have one stakeholder, maybe we have 10, maybe we have 20. If this is going to be put in front of users, maybe we have 500 or 1,000 users, okay? We are forcing them to spend their time to figure this out rather than make it easy and save them time and frustration and confusion. In the second example, it's very clear that this first row is actually a header row, and all the data underneath reflects the header. Now, this is a very good technique, contrast, to differentiate between different elements. And here's another example of before, and we saw this one already, and after. So we're using contrast, we're using grouping, okay, proximity even. This information is closest to this information, so together we create meaning. Okay? And that brings us to the conclusion of this presentation, which is that information design helps you get more out of less. Information design saves you time, and information design increases quality. I am happy to connect with anybody. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Anybody who's attended this presentation, I'll be happy to connect with you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you very much, Pamela. Now it's time to ask the questions. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. You can raise your hand or probably drop your questions in the chat box and I'm going to read them out. So let's hear from you. Any questions, please? Feel free to drop. So she would be glad to answer all your questions. Thank you so much, Pamela. Coming from a content writing background, I get what you say, Lord. I understand what you're trying to say or what you've shared with us today because, people tend to react to what appeals to their visuals more. And people understand better when they see things they understand and when things are not so packed. And so that makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. And I also learned new things today, actually. I do. And it also kind of gave me insights into how to design things better. So if you have more questions or you have insight, whatever you have to ask, please drop it in the chat box and she'll be glad to answer your questions. Or you can as well raise your hands up and I would, pick you.
The interesting thing about information design is that most people don't know about it, and most people don't see the relevance to their job until it's kind of put in front of them. And I think that if somebody were to ask you, kind of point blank saying, hey, do you do information design or do you think there's value in that? They might say, no, I'm not a graphic designer. No, it doesn't have any relevance to me at all. But as we saw with the different examples, that every day, if we can apply information design concepts to our work, then we are ahead. We have better communication. We even have a more effective brand in the workplace because people can rely on us to get good information and that they know they're going to get quality and easy to understand information from us. I mean, don't we all have some people in our workplace that, oh no, they're sending me an email. I just don't understand their emails, right? Because those emails don't think about the user. They don't think about who's ingesting that information and what they actually need.
Yeah, that's true. I myself, when I see emails that are so packed, I'm like, I don't have strength. So if I just look at probably the subject and it's something of importance and probably not high priority, I can just probably start it and just let it be for later because I can't really go through it. It's tiring, really tiring. So understand. Overall, it makes our work easier, right? It makes people want to read what you have to give. Yeah. When you give in maybe a report or whatever it is you're sending in, it makes people want to see what you're doing. It will always place yours first before theirs, before other people, and that will make your work easier overall.
Oh,
Yeah.
100%. And,
Mhm.
if you want to get promoted in the workplace, it's about communication because there's a lot of people who have the same technical skills that you do, and you
Mhm.
in global you. But
Yeah.
the differentiating factor is communication. So when I
Yeah.
was writing my book called Get the Job, I
Mhm.
interviewed lots and lots of HR people, and I asked the same question. I said, what do these VPs and senior VPs, what do they have that other people don't? And the answer was social skills, communication. That's what they have. They're not smarter, they don't work harder, they're not better, but they have communication skills. So
Mhm.
as you were pointing out about we're just in such a visual society now, it's another skill that we can add to our toolbox, which
Mhm.
is can we be a visual communicator when that often is the number one way that we are communicating with our stakeholders?
Yeah, true, true. And that got me thinking for people applying for jobs, right? If you can make your cover letter probably easy to read, because not so packed, easy to read, you make use of your white spaces and the rest, and you put your subjects or probably highlight the important points you want. Probably you make it bold. I guess it will make the recruiter or talent manager read your post or read your cover letter and like get the main points they want because they're actually scanning through the cover letters. They don't have the time to settle down and read through. So I think this is something aspiring business analysts or people who are in the job market looking for jobs should also consider, not just people already on the job, people who are also looking for job can take up this also. Thank you so much. This makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
That's an excellent point, because
Mm-hmm.
your resume and your cover letter, it gets there before you do. And so
Yeah.
that's really the first impression that you are showing recruiters and HR
So,
people about how you communicate.
yeah.
And I mean, that's a wonderful example of how important
Mm-hmm.
information design is.
Yeah, very important. And also, probably in the workspace, you're trying, sometimes it's just the tiny things, the tiny details that stand us out, not necessarily maybe coming to do big things, right? So, if you're able to like set yourself out when you're making reports, you might probably be a junior staff, not necessarily a senior staff, irrespective of your position in the company, and just try to make your things stand out, do things differently. You don't have to do a lot to make it make sense, just simple and easy to understand. So thank you so much, Pamela. This makes a lot of sense. And I also believe that we have people who have learned a lot here, probably aspiring business analysts, and I'm sure they've picked this point and also experienced business analysts on this session. I'm sure that everybody, one way or the other, is thinking of ways. Because as we were talking and presenting, I was imagining different things, right? How to make things better, how to structure things better, how to structure the information better. And I know a lot of other people on here are doing the same or have gotten the same insights. So thank you very much. If you're on here, you can connect with Pamela. She would definitely respond to you, right? She's ready to connect. Any questions you have, feel free to reach out to us. And if you're not following us on our social media platforms, this is the right time to do it because where this comes from, we have more coming, right? We have a lot planned for you. And Pamela, we hope to see more of you, right? When we call you, answer us sometime next time in the future. We hope to see your face. We hope to learn from you more. And also, if you have any questions, if you need a supporting community, Dobac is here for you. We are looking out for business analysts. Whether you're experienced or you're aspiring to be a business analyst, we're here for you. We'll ensure you get the right resources to thrive and we'll push you to where you're supposed to be. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for being on here. See you in our next session next week. All
Thank
right.
you. My
Yeah,
pleasure.
thank you. So bye, everyone. Mhm. feel free to hop off the call. We're done. Thank you.